Welcome, everyone. I now call the October 7th, 2025 regular City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this point, we'll take a moment to take the roll call of council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Thank you. Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alders?
Here.
Councilmember Kurd?
Here.
Councilmember Mankey? Councilmember Dodd?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present with the exception of Councilmember Mankey, who is absent and excused.
Thank you. First up is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to the meeting agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to public engagement opportunities. You can sign up for news and alerts. Stay informed by subscribing to the city's email newsletter for monthly updates and opportunities. You can also sign up for emergency alerts, which provide valuable information when the unexpected happens. You can subscribe to both right on our homepage. You can also get involved in the Pros Plan update. Bothell is updating its Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan, and we want your input. Take an online survey to help inform the development of this plan, which shapes the future of our parks and programs. Other engagement opportunities follow, and we know everybody has opinions about parks, so engage with that one, please. You can trick-or-treat on Main Street. On Halloween night, trick-or-treaters will make their way down Main Street for 30-plus candy stops hosted by local businesses, organizations, and the City of Bothell. This is a free and family-friendly event, and it is a ton of fun, I can confirm. All right, next up, we have a couple of different proclamations. The first is for Indigenous Peoples Day. Whereas, since time immemorial, Indigenous people have built vibrant and diverse cultures, safeguarding land, language, spirit, knowledge, and traditions across generations. And whereas Indigenous Peoples Day is recognized every year on the second Monday in October, giving us the opportunity to celebrate the invaluable contributions and resilience of Indigenous peoples, recognize their inherent sovereignty, and commit ourselves to building authentic relationships with our tribal and Indigenous communities. And whereas Washington State is home to 29 federally recognized Indigenous tribes, and well over 300,000 Washington residents identify as American Indian, Alaska Native, or Indigenous, and whereas before incorporation, the land that we now call Bothell was first inhabited by the Coast Salish people, a diverse group of more than 40 independent nations who speak more than 20 languages and whose territories stretch throughout coastal British Columbia and Washington State. And whereas Indigenous people were separated from their homelands due to battles, genocide, and Western expansion, and while honoring the customs and accomplishments of Native Americans, we also acknowledge our nation's history of settler colonialism that has inflicted violence and deprivation upon Indigenous people. And whereas despite the attempted eradication of Indigenous communities, Native Americans continue to live, learn, work, and contribute to the community in Bothell with their rich and diverse cultures, traditions, and histories. Now, therefore, I, Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim October 13th, 2025 as Indigenous Peoples Day, and encourage our community to actively seek knowledge about the original inhabitants of North America and stand in solidarity with Indigenous and tribal communities to preserve Native American heritage and traditions for generations to come. And I believe we have Victor here to accept.
Buju Gakina Awia. Hello, everyone. My name is Aiden Rodriguez. Aiden Rodriguez Peltier. I serve as the student government president at the University of Washington Bothell for the 2025 to 26 school year. I'm the first Native in the role, and my vice president, Miyuki Sandoval, is the first vice president Native in the role. I'm a member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Ojibwe and the Nakota of the White Bear First Nations on my mother's side, and I'm Nicaraguan on my father's side. I've lived in the Kenmore-Bothell area all my life. I wanted to express my gratitude to Mason Thompson, the City Council, and Bothell for the recognition of Indigenous people and culture. My family is here due to the Indian Relocation Act, and I hold so much gratitude for the first people of these lands. Thank you to the Muckleshoot, Duwamish, Suquamish, Snoqualmie, Snohomish, Puyallup, Tulalip, and all our Coast Salish relatives. We see you and we honor you. This proclamation is a step forward to giving Indigenous people the acknowledgement we deserve. I would also like to speak on Christopher Columbus and the history between Indigenous Peoples Day and Columbus Day. The terms Indian or American Indian came to be due to his ignorance and belief that he landed in India. One cannot discover lands that people were living on since time immemorial. There are over 574 federally recognized tribes and many more that are fighting for their needed and owed recognition. Columbus Day, in comparison, is neither needed by anyone nor owed anything. Indigenous Peoples Day counters such ignorance of history. It is an opportunity to raise awareness of and rectify the many wrongs of the past and the present. As well, the City of Bothell Proclamation highlights the continued existence, contribution, and sovereignty of Indigenous people. So I say, miigwech, thank you. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you.
Let me just follow up really quick.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate this. I love coming in and addressing the council at this time. I'm Victor Begay, Navajo. My family is originally from New Mexico. I love saying this. I'm a newly tenured faculty member.
Woohoo!
That is really cool. Just this year, so that's just really great. At Cascadia College, I work with my colleagues at UW-Bothell closely. This is a great example of the things that we do at Cascadia, 2 institutions, but I just see us always as one campus. I invite council, community members, staff, employees to the fourth annual Indigenous Peoples Day event at Cascadia College next Monday between 11 and 1. Please come, hang out with us, enjoy the work that our Native students put together in this program. And the proclamation, again, I really do appreciate that. It helps me to better understand where the community lies, and council is a great example of that. And thank you to my colleague, Gabi, for helping coordinate the co-sponsorship as well as the continued partnership between Cascadia College and City of Bothell. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Victor. And we'll see you next year, if not before then, okay? All right, next up is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas National Domestic Violence Awareness Month was established in October 1987 to create a community dialogue about violence, to advocate for legislation and law enforcement to protect survivors of domestic violence, and to encourage public awareness and action to prevent abuse. And whereas domestic violence is a pattern of physical, emotional, verbal, and sexual abuse, which includes but is not limited to threats, intimidation, isolation, and financial control. And whereas nearly 3 in 10 women and 1 in 10 men in the U.S. have experienced rape, physical violence, or stalking by a partner and reported it having a related impact on their functioning. And whereas while violence impacts all people, some individuals and communities experience inequities in risk for violence. Communities more than twice as likely to experience domestic violence during their lifetime include multiracial, American Indian, Alaska Native, Black, bisexual women, bisexual men, transgender people, and people with a disability. And whereas nearly 53% of intimate partner violence and 52% of domestic violence victimizations are not reported to law enforcement, and whereas when survivors are ready, there are resources to help, including the National Domestic Violence Hotline, Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and Domestic Violence Services of Snohomish County. Now, therefore, I, Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do proclaim October 2025 as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, joining advocates and communities across the country in taking action to prevent domestic violence and to stand with survivors of domestic violence. And we have Emma Titternis here.
I thought I was going to turn it off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emma Titternis. I am the Legal Advocacy Manager at Domestic Violence Services. Thank you, City Council, so much for your words and recognition of the impact of domestic violence within our community. Domestic Violence Services of Snohomish County first began serving survivors in 1976, but I'd like to share a little bit about what our work has looked like in the last year. In the last year, we received 3,675 calls to our 24-hour support line. And we gave families 9,501 safe bed nights for 116 adults and 140 children in our emergency shelter program, and a further 46,602 safe bed nights for 90 adults and 159 children in our supportive housing programs. We provided 2,216 hours of legal advocacy for 425 clients in need of protection order assistance, address confidentiality program enrollment, or family law referrals. We provided children's programming for 246 kids and prevention and education for 6,544 youth and 743 adults. Our team is dedicated, trauma-informed, and deeply connected to our community, but everyone benefits when the community comes together, like tonight, to acknowledge and support our most vulnerable populations. And just because I have everybody's attention, if you are interested in donating, volunteering, or if you or someone you know has questions about things that are going on in your relationship, we can be reached 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I have to keep reading. I can't look away. At 425-252-2873. Thank you so much.
For what it's worth, I totally understand the I have to keep reading, I can't look away thing. So you're good. Thank you. All right, next up is public.
Do you want to do pictures?
Oh, do you guys want pictures? All right, pictures it is. All right, next up is public comment. The city has accepted public comment in writing as well as signups for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but we do not engage in discussion of these topics, and staff will make notes of items requiring follow-up. City clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. We have received 2 written comments. The first one was from Matthew Ragerman regarding standards for continuous sidewalks, and the second was from Justin Beaufort regarding frontage improvements. And I believe Mr. Beaufort is here in the audience and wishes to speak for his 3 minutes.
Thank you, council members. I will read the executive summary of what I sent to you. I gave a slightly longer version. To begin, my lot was used as a test bed for what was wrong with the code prior to the Middle Housing Code amendments. So I participated in that. I went on the tours. I provided some input that ended up being codified, the lot averaging, things like that, right? The whole point was to keep my home and not have to destroy it just for the purposes of meeting some code when there was plenty of space to go around. So I consider myself a proven partner in this. I did also create an ADU since that has passed, and that ADU was able to house a young couple just first time leaving their parents' home to start their life together, which was a vision espoused by the mayor himself during the middle housing code amendments. So, you know, there was actual action here, right? And that's what I'm trying to get across. Is I'm trying to continue that. So since then, the RM style zoning has been passed, and my home happens to be right above the line of where RM2 starts. So now I can do a little bit better than just like 2 lots in a single family home or maybe a duplex or something like that. So the plan was to try and do that. The goal was to build 3 new townhomes at the back part of my lot. I'm on a corner lot, a flat corner lot, so it's very easy to do, to provide more housing. And it's an ideal location for location infrastructure and everything because Spring Ridge was just created in 2021. So there's new sidewalks, new sewer lines, new power lines, new everything. Street lights, it's all there. However, the obstacle is since there are 3 proposed new townhouses, this triggers frontage improvements and specifically the bike lane one. This would require us to destroy pretty much all the sidewalk at the front of my home and redo it to add the raised bike lane. That cost alone would scuttle the deal, for sure. So I've already more or less been told by the builder that that would just be too much for a small infill project like this. So it would be, it would effectively leave my backyard as a fallow field. I just would not, it would never really pencil out unless I destroy my home, and I'm not willing to do that. So yeah, and I have, in the middle housing talks, I got to speak to like 3 or 4 different people in a similar situation, and they are kind of looking to me as sort of the example of if I can do it, then they can do it, and if I fail, then they won't even try. So these are all people in the West Hill area. So what I'm asking for is to not, at least for infill or something along those lines, you know, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like the idea of having to raise the bike path for just one house length and go down, in my opinion, is more dangerous than having a consistent bike lane like I have right now. I have bike lanes on both sides, and just the more traditional ones without the raised protected path. And then finally, the only 2 people who can help are the Director of Public Works, who can, quote, may grant a deviation on reduced improvements based on transportation system. In this case, I just feel it's more dangerous, but it.
That's all I have signed up right now. If anybody else in the audience wishes to speak, please step to the podium and state your name. You'll have 3 minutes. Go, that little button on the mic. Here, I'll get it. There you go. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Prasad Angluri.
Yep.
I'd like to.
Thank you.
I'm here respectfully request consideration and adoption of resolution affirming Bothell support for immigrants and the rights of all residents. I have been living in Bothell last 19 years. With my 2 kids pretty much raised here, and also a couple of key revisions that I have just given to Laura. So Bothell always has stood as inclusion, safety, and opportunity. But in the recent years, national rhetoric and policy shifts have created uncertainty and fear among many immigrant and non-immigrant families right here in our city. So this resolution, by the way, this was already emailed to all of you, I think, drafted by Kathy and Ray Thompson and Bob. So a couple of revisions, I just shared it to Laura just now. So the revisions I'm suggesting, or we are suggesting, are 2. First, we acknowledge the real-world challenges families face due to national developments that have affected their sense of belonging and safety. Second, we take local action by partnering with North Shore School District and community organization to include civic education and know your rights, information in schools and community centers. We can also share multilingual materials that helps residents to understand their rights and the protections already in place under Washington state law. I'm sure, I never felt any, first of all, in the last 19 years, I feel definitely Bothell as a home. I never felt anything different at all, not just for Indian immigrants, any immigrants, definitely. But last few years, new immigrants have been coming in. Sometimes young families have been feeling insecure. That's why I'm here to share the resolution. So I urge the council to adopt this resolution with these revisions and continue showing that Bothell leads with both heart and action. Thank you very much for considering Mayor and all the councilmen.
Thank you. Why is this stopping? Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor Thompson. If anybody else is in the audience who wishes to speak, please step to the podium. Or if you're in the virtual audience, please use the raise hand function and we will panel you in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is reports. We have the city manager report. So, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have a couple of brief announcements, and then we've moved something up from community reports just in the interest of time, and have one staff report as well. So going in order, just one quick thing. Mary, you always do such a great job of announcing of all the events that are coming up in the community, and October is a busy season. You'll notice that there are some months, I usually call them April, May, and October, where everything happens all at once. So this upcoming Saturday, there's a couple of events that the community may want to be aware of. First of all, starting at 10 a.m. till 1 p.m., as you may know, we're celebrating Fire Prevention Week, and at Fire Station 42 is the annual open house, which I know many in the community enjoy attending and seeing some demonstrations, climbing up in a fire truck and getting that plastic helmet. So if you are one of those people, Fire Station 42, which is on Beardsley Boulevard, from 10 a.m. till 1 p.m., everyone is welcome. Little pro tip of, depending on how the weather is cooperating, parking is always limited at the fire station too, but you're always welcome to park down at City Hall and take a walk down, or along Beardsley as well. The second thing is as the open house closes at 1 o'clock, hopefully people will make their way downtown. There is a opening for no longer referred to as simply Lot E, F, and G, but we welcome the community to come to Triangle Junction here on the corner of Highway 522 and Bothell Way. We've been discussing that temporary activation of the property for a number of years now, in terms of trying to make something that the community can enjoy as we continue to also work on environmental remediation. And in the next few years, we'll then have a future vision conversation of what comes next. You can drop temporary and say what's the highest and best use for that property. So there are amenities that you may have observed, including picnic tables and shade sails, which also might help deter some of the rain for a while too. And an ADA walking path, as well as some signage that explains what's happening at that site. It is also how you, community members may utilize that site to have their own downtown activation and enjoy that space together in community. So that'll be taking place from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. There will be a small formal presentation, but there will be also opportunities to just come mix, mingle, visit the pop shops, and support small businesses and meet your neighbors. So we hope to see people there. With that, I'm going to turn to our first presentation, which is our annual visit from the University of Washington Bothell campus. We are pleased once again to be joined by Chancellor Kristen Esterberg to share a little bit more about what's happening on campus as the school year kicks off. And with that, Dr. Esterberg, please, thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening. Thank you so very much for inviting me here. Mayor, council members, staff, fellow guests, I am very proud to serve as the Chancellor of the University of Washington Bothell. And every year I look forward to coming and giving an update about the university. And this year is no exception, as I have some important updates and good news to share. And I'm also, as always, happy to answer any questions you might have. I want to start with the good news. This year we have about 6,300 students enrolled in the University of Washington Bothell campus. This exceeds our prior peak enrollment in autumn 2020. So not only are we thrilled to serve so many students who come primarily from Seattle and the North Puget Sound area, but our strong enrollment is also a source of stability for the university, given that 65% of our operating revenues come from tuition and fees. So as you are all keenly aware, I'm sure Washington's budget outlook is not improving this year, and this certainly will have an impact on UW-Bothell as the state provides approximately the other 35% of our operating funds. One thing you may not know is that UW-Bothell does not draw any significant funds from the main UW endowment. We have our own endowment, which is modest, full of promise, I might say, and I'll talk in a moment about how we're growing some philanthropic support. But our overall budget consists of tuition and state funding. And the good news here is that we have very healthy reserves, and our record-breaking student enrollment puts us in a very solid position to navigate these very challenging times. The federal situation, as you well know, also remains fluid, and the decline in support for higher education, and especially the loss of federal research dollars, will have and has had an impact on the University of Washington, which is the largest public recipient of federal research dollars in the country. UW-Bothell is a primarily undergraduate teaching-centric university, and so we are less affected than our Seattle campus. Yet being part of one University of Washington certainly means there is a downstream impact on the Bothell campus. Now, going back to the good news, I do want to mention several particularly generous gifts and grants that UW-Bothell has received since last spring. And the first is from our longtime supporter and Bothell native, Jan Hunter, who is an educator, volunteer, and a passionate advocate for the community. I know some of you may have known Jan personally. Just before she passed earlier this year, she and her husband, Dick, committed a $1.5 million gift to UW-Bothell to renovate the historic Truly House, which is one of our most significant campus landmarks. And our plan is to revitalize that space so that it can be used for student engagement as well as for alumni and community gatherings. And I do hope you will all come and gather when that renovation is complete. The impact that Jan, her husband Dick, and her extended family, including her uncle, Gordon Green, have had on the city and the region and on our campus cannot be overstated. We mourn Jan's passing, but look forward to her legacy, making a lasting impact for many, many years to come. I'm also grateful to announce that we received a $1 million National Science Foundation grant received by Dr. Rachel Scher, who is an associate professor in the School of STEM, which was to redesign physics labs for the modern era, to really rethink how we teach physics. So we continue to improve on the way in which we think about teaching and learning so that we can make sure that every student who comes to UW-Bothell has the time, the space, and the prompts that they need to improve their skills and their ability to experiment in the physics labs. So speaking of students and the many students we are proud to serve, we recently wrapped up our Welcome Week, which started with move-in days on September 19th and 20th, and I think went very smoothly this year for more than our 700 residential students, and then to our invited students and our entire campus community. We invited all to a series of events to connect, explore, and learn all that UW-Bothell has to offer. I will say with the start of the school year, our new residential village is now about 65% occupied, which is up from 50% when it first opened. My aim is that over the next 2 years, it will come to full occupancy. And I know you will meet many of these students as they live, relax, and shop in and around Bothell. I understand the pop-up shops are an important destination, as is Zulu's Board Game Cafe, and I hope when you see our students, you'll welcome them to the community. We are so incredibly proud of our student body, as evidenced by our incredible student body president and vice president. Our very diverse student body brings so many perspectives and cultural backgrounds to our region. It's a richness that I know we all celebrate. And I'm especially pleased with the work that we are doing on the campus, especially in these challenging times, to provide an atmosphere of recognition and respect for all who come on our campus. Since 2021, we've launched a series of constructive dialogue activities and seminars to students, faculty, and staff to help build our capacity to engage in dialogue across difference. Last year alone, more than 2,000 students participated, either in the classroom or in co-curricular programming. This year, we are launching a project called the Pluralism Project, And our campus community was selected as only one of 10 in the nation in this important work, which is sponsored by the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. Through this program, students, faculty, and staff learn how to be bridge builders in a divided world using a respect, relate, cooperate framework created by Interfaith America. I believe the Pluralism Project will serve us well to help us address the many challenging issues of our time. Now, we take quite seriously our commitment to serving this region, beginning in Bothell and then expanding across the greater Seattle and North Puget Sound region. And as our region grows and diversifies, the need has never been greater for higher education that is affordable, accessible, and high quality. About 90% of our students come right from this very region. Only about 15 of our first-year students and 49 of our transfer students come from outside the United States. And I know I've stated this before, but I think it bears repeating. Our alumni stay after graduation. More than 2/3 of our graduates live within 25 miles of our Bothell campus, which means you cannot really go very far here without running into a UW-Bothell student or graduate. And these alumni contribute to the workforce, they strengthen our industries, and they build stronger communities, including in our really vibrant city. So since our founding 35 years ago, UW-Bothell has graduated more than 34,000 students, undergraduates and graduates, including the more than 1,900 who became our most recent alumni last June. Now, in honor of our anniversary, our 35th anniversary this past year, we published a report to the community, which highlights some of the people and programs that made an impact across the nation, across our region. It's available on our website, and I know that our Vice Chancellor for Advancement would be happy to send copies to anybody who might like one. But I also want to share the story of our founding Chancellor, Warren Buck. I know many of you were there at his talk at McMinimans in August about how the university helped make Bothell into a college town through partnerships with many of our community leaders. It was such a privilege to see you there. And I think speaks volumes about the impact that our campus has with and for and in partnership with our community. This year, we are also launching a process to develop our campus's next strategic plan in lockstep with the UW's overall strategic plan being led by our new president, Robert J. Jones, and Provost Tricia Serio. I am really proud to announce that President Jones visited the campus on Friday, and he was quite pleased, I think, and amazed, not only with our wetland, with our greenhouse, but by the quality of our students and our academic programming. And we are looking forward to working with the city, with the chamber, with our neighbors on envisioning where our campus will be in the next 5 years and what impact can we make together. Helping to lead these conversations are two new members of my leadership team, Dr. Brian Martinson, our new Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, has a long track record of fostering student success, and I hope you will get a chance to meet him quite soon. He joins us from Minnesota State University, Mankato, where he has served in a variety of roles, including as interim executive director of the Minnesota Polytechnic and Applied Learning Institute. So we're looking forward to his bringing some of that knowledge here. I'm also pleased that Shanti Peramal is our new Vice Chancellor for Planning and Administration. I'm sure she'll be working closely with the city. And she joins us from the Seattle campus, where she served as the Assistant Dean for Finance and Administration for the College of Education there. So while our process to create the strategic plan has just begun and will last throughout the academic year, I can say with full confidence that it will include goals to strengthen our partnership with this extraordinary city. We are eager to collaborate ever more closely on the priorities and opportunities we share, from sustainability to transit to workforce development and regional events. And so on that ambitious note, let me again say thank you for inviting me here. I will happily respond to any questions or comments you may have. And let me just say how proud I am to be a part of this broader community, and how proud I am that that Bothell is indeed a college town, and that we in Cascadia College provide the college to that town. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Zorns?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few comments. Everybody's going to be glad to not hear me say this, but as a double dog and a parent of one child who graduated from U of W Bothell and one that graduated from main campus, we have a lot of dog spirit at the house. But I live on the same hill as the campus, and because it's salmon season, I'm walking every day down to watch the salmon. All that to say, I've run across some dear students where we just sat and had conversation as we're looking and watching for salmon, and they're freshmen and they're like, I'm settling in, and as a parent, I think I see you settling in, and I wish your parents could see this because you're going to do all right. And I'm just hoping as time goes on, there'll be just organic, more opportunities where the community can mingle and create community with the students. So from this end to your end, if you ever have an inspiration, I'm in.
Great. Well, thank you. I couldn't be prouder of our students. They are amazing.
I will just say we are incredibly happy that people made decisions long ago that we get to benefit from. So Bothell is now a college town.
Hear, hear.
And we're happy to have you. We're happy to have the school. And we really appreciate you coming to talk with us tonight.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. So last on our agenda is an update on the Shelton View Forest application that we'll be discussing for the transfer of land. This is something that really aligns with a couple of priorities of the City Council, including your council priorities themselves, which looks to preserve land in the Shelton View area, as well as in your legislative priorities. And so we've been working on an application process that comes about every couple of years, and wanted to provide council an update on the progress of completion, as well as some next steps. One of the things that I'll also share as we pull this presentation up tonight is that we wanted to provide council this update tonight, but we will also be working on some messaging to our legislators who represent our district to make sure that they're aware of the application as well as we are coordinating a site visit with our state lobbyist support to invite those who represent Bothell, as well as if there's interest from the Department of Natural Resources to come and hear a little bit more about this land too. So we know this is an important one for council, and certainly it's important to the community, and so we wanted to provide some updates. With that, I think we're just about there. So I am going to turn things over to Nick Stroop, the Director of Bothell Parks and Recreation. Nick?
All right, well, thank you, Kyle, and welcome, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. We're excited to be here tonight to talk a little bit about the process that we went through over this past summer to put together a trust land transfer grant application for hopefully for the acquisition of the Shelton View Forest parcel that's owned by DNR. Tonight on my left, I have Kai Patnode. Kai is our Parks Planning and Capital Projects Assistant who actually worked on this all summer and worked with our community to put together this really strong grant application. And Kai has some personal touches to this as well, but I'm going to let him share that. And then again, I would just say that it is Kai's first night in front of council. So he's excited to go. He's ready to go, but we'll take it from there.
Is that your cue for us to grill him?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. My name is Kai Patnode, and I'm the Parks Planning and Capital Project Assistant with the city. And this evening, I'll be sharing a brief update of the city's 2027 to 2029 Trust Land Transfer Grant application for the 26.86 acre Department of Natural Resource, or DNR, Shelton View parcel, part of the larger Shelton View Forest. Through this effort, we are looking to preserve this parcel and ultimately the larger forest as public open space. And on a personal note, this past May, I earned my degree in landscape architecture from Washington State University, and I grew up right here in Bothell on 7th Avenue West, where the South Trailhead to the Shelton View Forest is located. So this feels very full circle to me, and I feel connected to the forest in this process. So this slideshow will give a brief overview of the Shelton View Forest, outline the trust land transfer application, highlight the city's goals for this effort, and conclude with the next steps following submission. So this map highlights the Shelton View DNR parcel, the larger Shelton View Forest, and its surroundings. The parcel is currently owned and managed by DNR as state trust lands, which are managed to generate revenue for public schools through timber harvest or agriculture. However, the Shelton View parcel is designated by DNR as urban land in transitional status. That means that under local zoning and land use plans, it's considered suitable for future development rather than long-term forestry. So, established in 1989, the Trust Land Transfer Program allows public agencies like cities, counties, or state agencies to receive certain trust lands that may not be well suited for traditional revenue-generating uses, but have high ecological, recreational, or community value. Many of the lands transferred through this program become parks, open spaces, or nature preserves for the public, which is exactly our goal for the Shelton View parcel. At the same time, the program ensures that trust beneficiaries like construction for K-12 schools continue to receive revenue. When lands are transferred, the state legislature provides funding to purchase replacement lands that can be managed for timber, agriculture, or other long-term generating uses. As part of the City Council's state legislative agenda for 2025 and 2026 and in your 2040 vision, you've prioritized developing a strategy to preserve the Shelton View Forest as open space for recreation. Community members and stakeholders have also advocated for the larger forest as a priority for preservation for over a decade. To advance this effort, city staff submitted a 2027-2029 trust land transfer grant application to DNR for the Shelton View parcel as a first step towards the permanent preservation of the larger Shelton View forest. Additionally, by designating the site as a forested park for low-impact recreation, the city would expand park access and equity, helping close a current gap in park access for nearby neighborhoods. Finally, city ownership would strengthen community stewardship. Local groups like the Shelton View Forest Stewardship Association would be able to partner more closely with the city to protect and care for this valued forest. Last week, we submitted the application to DNR. From here, DNR will begin its review process, which includes 3 main steps. The first main step is a trust analysis. So DNR evaluates whether transferring the Shelton View parcel is in the best interest of the trust, looking at factors such as site productivity, access, and surrounding land uses. If the parcel passes that initial review, we will be invited to present to DNR, likely in the spring or early summer of 2026, to demonstrate why this parcel is a strong candidate. The third step is prioritization. DNR then scores and ranks projects both on their analysis and applicant presentations. The ranked list is then reviewed by the Board of Natural Resources, which may approve, reorder, or remove properties before submitting the final list to the state legislature for funding consideration. The legislature decides which parcels to include and sends the final list back to the board for final approval. So in summary, this effort represents a significant step a significant step forward in preserving one of Bothell's most valued natural open spaces, protecting it for recreation, education, community connections, and environmental benefits in perpetuity. This application effort is also supported by over 300 letters of support from community members, students, local organizations, State Representative Davina Durr, the Tulalip tribes, and the Duwamish tribe. Thank you.
And Mayor, before opening it up to questions, one thing I'll just note is that we also acknowledge that this program is not necessarily one that projects like this are typically successful. However, we would definitely follow the mindset of you got to play to win. We've got to be in this process in order to be considered. But also, I think to Kai and team's credit, the community support and reaching out to everything from Shelton View Elementary to some of our from our formal partners really goes a long way into helping open the door for, again, maybe a long shot sometimes makes it through. So we're going to be doing everything we can in the next period to see what we can make happen.
Yeah.
With that, I'll turn things over to the mayor.
We'll give it all we got. Councilmember Zorns.
I have been watching this from the fringe and have walked Shelton View and talked with people and invested in it. And I know that this interest is bigger than most people can appreciate. So thank you for bringing your time and skill and talent into this. I do have a question for you because on our hill, there's been 3 deer walking around, and one of the UW students that I was talking to this weekend said that at North Creek Forest there are deer walking around. Is there any, aside from smaller critters, is there larger wildlife activity going on in Shelton View?
Yeah.
That deer.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
seen. I walked back there like most evenings this summer, and I saw, it was 3 different deer. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, that we talk about having pollinating bridges in urban communities that allow our pollinators, and I really, for these animals, I would love that we, think about having avenues and bridges for them to go from one forested area to another. And one thing that I thought that we do differently than Eastern Washington does, every now and then, one time I was out doorbelling, so 4 years ago, I was in the northeast part of Bothell, and people had named a bear, and I thought, oh my goodness, I was just there today. I did not bring my bear spray. But I love how here in King and Snohomish County, we tend to respect this wildlife, and I have a family that lives over in Antioch, just on the other side of the Cascades, and the way they dealt with a bear going through a less populated area was to shoot it, and it hadn't caused any problems. And I just thought, what a big difference from a more populated place. We take care, we try to take care of these animals, so it's good to hear that kind of activity is going on at Shelton View. Thanks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Curd.
Thanks. Thank you so much for the presentation, Kai, and thanks for stewarding this process through public input. I know that there was a lot of letter writing, and I saw that it was really engaging for members of the community. So I don't really have any questions, but I would encourage you to, as you see this process through, as we get feedback from DNR, to not tie the success of your work on this project to the trust land transfer process. What you've done already has been super helpful, and we up here know that especially the northwestern part of our city needs open space and parks. That's been well established in the previous PROS plans, and it's going to be continuing need. So it's a really high priority for us, and what you've done is to lay a really solid groundwork. So thank you for your work, and excited to see what the future holds, and if it's not trust land transfer, we'll figure other ways.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. Thanks for the update, and welcome to your first council meeting. And I couldn't say most of that any better than Councilmember Curd did, but I did want to add, as a Shelton View resident myself, I heard great feedback about your visit to Shelton View Elementary, and I really appreciate the work you're doing there. This has been fantastic to see, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Aldrich.
My turn to welcome you to council. It really was, you're just so pleasant to work with. As my family, I don't know how many people you got messages from in support of Shelton View, but really just appreciated it was you on the other side, and really grateful that you bring a knowledge of the area and a love for the forest. My family definitely shares that. We have lots and lots of pictures if you need them, especially of the owls that live there. We have some really nice owl photos. But really just grateful for all the work that you are doing on this. I think Councilmember Curd said it really well. You are laying the groundwork for something to happen here, whether it's the land trust transfer, which, you know, is just, it's our first attempt. There can be others if needed, but yeah, let's see. I think with just the tremendous community support that we saw, I was blown away by the number of people who wrote into you. Very grateful to the students at Shelton View Elementary as well to add their voices. And so thank you for doing all that legwork and putting it all together for us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. It's my turn to grill you. What's up with Wazoo, man? You come right after the talk from UW Chancellor and you say, I went to Washington State.
Not everybody can get into UW. It's okay.
Yeah, my twin brother went to UW. So.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
His evil twin brother, my dad.
That one got Kyle to open up his mic. He's a kook too.
He's a Wazoo. That's right. That's it. No, thank you for your work. My colleagues said it really very well. You did a great job, and thank you for all the work.
Yeah, thank you.
We are really happy to have you here, and I've heard wonderful feedback about you too. So, like, just thank you for that and just showing up and doing a really good job in community. I got one question for you. In your job interview, how hard did you lean on the fact that you grew up right down the street from Shelton View?
I mentioned it, yeah.
Good. Well done.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. We really appreciate you having you here, and we're really looking forward to the rest of this process.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, again, just with the closing note that we will continue to fight for Shelton View Forest. With that, I'll turn it over to the council for the rest of the meeting.
All right. Next up is council committee reports, community reports, and conversations. Councilmember Curd.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been a while since our last meeting, and I've been to 2 committee meetings in the interim. The first was RIA 8 Salmon Recovery Council for our watershed, and at the meeting there, shortly after our last council meeting, we discussed salmon season. You can go to the website. It's also linked on the city website to find out locations. Like Councilmember Zorns mentioned, that you can find salmon spawning in our local streams. So there's more information about that. There are a couple of stewarded sites throughout October and November to learn more about salmon spawning and to talk with naturalists in our watershed at free events for the family. So that's exciting and encouraging. The other thing that was mentioned at RIA 8 was talking about legislative priorities both at the state and federal levels. So that was timely because it's going to be season to start talking about our own legislative priorities. So I will be bringing those forward. If you want to see them ahead of time or anything, please let me know. It's also on the RIA 8 website. The other committee meeting that I attended was K4C, King County Cities Climate Collaboration Group. C. There's another C in there. That group is mainly focused on an upcoming talk with King County Executive Braddock. It will be on October 24th from 1 to 3 p.m. at King County Campus, Chinook Building, downtown Seattle. I'm unable to make it, but the invitation is open for all councils as part of the K4C cities. And so I encourage you to take a look at that. You should have received an email from Executive Braddock inviting you, and there's an RSVP. So please take a look at that and consider if you're available. The other thing that I mentioned at K4C was that we need to start talking about our legislative priorities. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, they'll be doing a one-pager, and also at this October 24th meeting, they'll be inviting a couple of legislators, specifically Representative Fitzgibbon, to discuss measures that might be discussed in Olympia this session. It's a short session, but that doesn't mean that bills don't get passed. And so that's coming up, and it's all kind of converging on legislative session season. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Councilmember Curd. I will be going to the K4C General Assembly, so let me know if anyone wants to carpool or light rail pool. That's how I'm getting there. But I did want to shout out today, Deputy Mayor Alcabra and Councilmember Zorns and I got to sit in on our staff run it. I don't know the name of the event. I'm looking at Kyle and Becky.
Youth Engagement Day?
Youth Engagement Day with North Creek High School students. It was fantastic. County Council Member Mead and Representative Kloba also came by and answered questions, and just our staff did an amazing job. So shout out to them here officially, but it was awesome, and thanks for letting us join. I've never felt older, nor been older. I also wanted to share, I went to the Eastside Transportation Partnership FIFA briefing for Councilmember Aldrichs a few weeks ago, and also got some FIFA updates through Snohomish County stuff in a Snow Track partner meeting. So I know the Deputy Mayor is excited about the World Cup, and so is everybody on Earth, apparently. So we're getting a lot of details there. And there's a really cool local organization that has answers to questions, but I won't go into all of it, but let me know if you have questions. I probably have notes about it. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Councilmember Zorns.
Thank you. I may ask Councilmember Dodd to circle back if I miss some pieces here. And I want to thank Councilmember Curd for bringing up salmon, because that was one of my points of encouraging people and all the people who are watching to go check the city website, because the salmon are running now, and they seem to be running more enthusiastically than they have in the last few years. I don't know if we'll ever... An old resident of Bothell once told me that when he first moved into next to North Creek, salmon were shoulder to shoulder. I don't know if in our lifetime if we'll ever see that again, but it's nice that those numbers are bumping back up. And kudos that some of the spots are listed on the website. And what was nice that I found this weekend is that everybody I bumped into was like, well, and you could go over to this community and see the salmon there. So if it involves water, there's probably salmon in there right now. And then I wanted to applaud and thank everyone who participated at Blythe Park this weekend for Arbor Day. That's a little sweat and effort, and that will pay off for Blythe Park. And I think the survey closes this weekend. It goes through this weekend. So hopefully everybody will get in there and do that. I may lean on Councilmember Dodd to fill in gaps here on MPRSA. What I can recollect is the planning of the youth center is still moving forward in Woodinville. The city is going with 2 lots instead of 3, so that's going to change the sizing of what that youth center will be, but it's still looking feasible. Surveys are going out to the community for priorities that they would like to see in that community center. The levy was discussed, and it will be again next week when we meet. And we will be talking about draft budgets for if the levy passes and what the budget's going to look like if the levy doesn't. And the only other piece of information that comes to memory and my notes is the tenant agreement between North Shore Senior Center and MPRSA. Looks like it's a good agreement that's going to work for everyone. And the last thing that I wanted to mention was a week or 2 ago, Councilmember Mankey and I did a tour of SEA and got to really see the airport, which was fun. It was a lot of fun to do. They're doing a terminal renovation that's supposed to be completed by World Cup, which is a big deal. We got to see a stormwater retention pond, and this was interesting to me that instead of using birds and planes don't mix very well, and they found instead of putting netting over the retention ponds, fill them up with black balls that float. So to waterfowl, it looks like just a hard surface, and they just keep on going. I just marvel at creativity that people come up with. We got to see their joint work on Miller Creek restoration, and it was beautiful there by the airport to see this beautiful restored area. They're also going to be in the pipeline, which I think some of you might want to, this will be on your shoulders to keep an ear out for. They want to put in a second terminal. Once that goes in, it is going to be maxed out, and this discussion is going to become quite in earnest because it's not just people, it's also products that move through the airport. There's going to be an earnest discussion of where to build a new airport. And if you're looking for something to do as you slot in all your commitments in the coming years, you might want to be putting some representation into that. No, I'm not advocating for an airport here in Bothell, but that will be coming up in earnest. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
All right, next up is projected agenda discussion. And if nobody has anything to talk about, I will happily accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Dodd.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Dodd and a second from Councilmember Curd to approve the consent agenda. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, City Clerk.
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorn?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alder?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Connell?
Yes.
Passes 6-0 with Councilmember Menke absent and excused.
All right, before we do our first study session of the evening, it is 7:02. We are going to take a break. We'll be back at 7:15. Do we have a new way to introduce that we're back at the meeting now?
Yes, it's called sad trombone.
What? Yeah.
I thought we were voting.
At least it's not a show. All right, next up is Agenda Bill 25169. It's our first of 3 study sessions tonight. The BMC Title 20 Construction Administrative Code Updates. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item will look familiar in that we did move it from the agenda on your last meeting on September 16th. So thank you to staff who are here for that item tonight that had that flexibility. But I think we're all grateful, including you, that we're here tonight. So definitely appreciate the flexibility. And at the table tonight, Council, we've been trying to do our best to highlight when you may have not seen people before, and you may have seen our next presenter, Brian Hampston, but maybe not at a council meeting at the table. He was close to the table a couple weeks ago. But Brian is joining us from Community Development this evening. He joined the city in April of 2025, so about 6 months ago, as the city's building official. And it's always a great compliment when you have somebody who's an alumni of the organization and comes back. So Brian actually originally started in Bothell many years ago as a senior plans examiner, and then his career has taken him to a couple other stops, but including most recently next door in Kenmore as their building official for over a decade.
But not that many years, right?
No, I mean,
Okay, yeah.
many, but not several. And his reputation in the region is really, really strong, and we're excited to have him as part of our team. In his role as building official, if that's not a term that you aspired to be when you were growing up, just really quickly, the building official administers our building code and oversees building inspections, plan review, and our code enforcement. So tonight, he is bringing a presentation about some of the some proposed considerations and changes for Title 20 of the Bothell Municipal Code. And with that, if I didn't take everything he would have said, I'm going to turn things over to Brian. Welcome.
All right, thank you, City Manager, and thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor and council members. I'm glad to be here. Like Kyle said, this is my first presentation and discussion with you all, so hopefully there'll be many more to come. Looking forward to working with you. Tonight what we have is, as Kyle mentioned, updates to the Title 20. And tonight Can you guys see anything on your screens? Okay. We're not asking for any action to happen tonight. We're just kind of testing the temperatures of the council and looking for maybe a head nod or a thumbs up or down on a few topics we're going to discuss with you tonight. And as we go forward, I do have some questions for you to consider when we're presenting this to you. Those questions are, do these recommendations reflect the council's priorities, which is to provide predictability, certainty, and to encourage growth? And also, are there any other areas within these topics that we should consider or be highlighted? And so for a little bit of background, Title 20 is the formal adoption of the building code, the state building code, and it's a way that the local jurisdictions get to make amendments to the codes if they desire to. One of the amendments that we have made in the past, many, many years ago, as Kyle mentioned, when I previously worked here, it was done is to adopt the Construction Administrative Code, which essentially is Chapter 1 of the building codes. And so it's easier to administer one particular set of codes instead of 15 or 16 different Chapter 1s and of the codes. So as we do adopt the codes, it regularly happens on a 3-year cycle. But with COVID, it got shifted around, and what the state's trying to do is get it back to that 3-year cycle. So the next 3-year cycle, regularly scheduled cycle, is 2026. And we're going to be having to adopt the next codes around November 1st of 2026. So with these ideas are things that we want to talk to you about to see if this is something that we want to incorporate into the Construction Administrative Code before we go spending a whole bunch of time and effort on it. So with that, the first topic is a flexibility time limitation for projects that offer compelling public benefits. And these can be for educational facilities, upper educational facilities, higher educational facilities. Bless you. And other public beneficial projects such as infrastructure or transportation utilities, and possibly even affordable housing. So what we're recommending is to allow the city some flexibility to grant extensions to the applications and permits for these projects to qualify as affordable housing. The problem with most of these, some of these projects are they run into external factors that they can't control. Some of those factors may be funding cycles or procurement regulations, and then it delays the project. And what often happens or could happen is the applications could lapse or the permits could expire. If a project's application or permit expires, there's a few steps that they may have to go through in order to get that reinstated. That could be things such as redesigning some of the plans, resubmitting the plans, and also paying additional fees, going through timely plan reviews. And so what we're looking to try to recommend is to provide that, that benefit to the public by being able to extend these applications. So if the council is in support of this particular topic, Jason Greenspan, which I forgot to introduce, is of course the Community Development Director, is with me tonight. We would draft up some code language that would be included, and we could run that by you in a future meeting.
Is this where we can give some comment?
Sure.
So what you're talking about, is it going to be tied with projects that are dependent on grants?
Probably, yeah. Typically, it's publicly funded projects.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, I think for the interest of time, it would be helpful for you to get to all three of them before we open up to questions, because we do have 3 study sessions tonight.
Okay. The second topic is the incentives that we offer through the Green Building Program. And currently, with these changes, we're not looking to end the program or hinder it in any way. We're actually looking to try to right-size this program and get it to where we can actually get some takers on some of these for this specific program, the green building incentive. Currently, there's 4 incentives that the program offers, and that is a building permit fee rebate, the parking reductions, reduced minimum lot sizes for planned unit developments, expedited alternate methods and requests. The parking reductions are a moot point because we eliminated that requirement. The reduced minimum lot sizes for PUDs and the expedited alternate methods request makes sense, and we think we should keep those in there. The one that needs to be revisited is the building permit fee rebate program. This program currently does not have a time limitation on when an application for a fee rebate to a permit could be applied for. So this, as you can imagine, could be difficult to budget for and manage and predict over years, because you could actually get an application to refund a portion of the permit fee after the project is finalized, or many years later, and it could even be a future budget cycle. So you can imagine how hard that is to predict and budget for. As the alternative, what we're hearing is the timeliness and predictability aspects are often higher priorities for developers. And so they actually do consider quicker plan reviews and permitting a cost beneficial. Developers are emphasizing that prolonged permitting can actually cost a lot of money for their projects. Unlike the rebate program, this is a benefit that we can be applied immediately during the permitting process, with providing a more timely and tangible incentive. So with that, our recommendation for this one would be to replace the building permit fee rebate portion with an expedited building permit review process. Then again, that would be something that Jason and I would work on together on creating that code language if you're interested in pursuing this code amendment, and bring that back for you for further discussion. The currently the last, we can definitely have more ideas if anybody thinks of any in the future to be part of this code amendment, but this particular one for tonight is the whether or not we should require fire sprinklers in all new single-family houses and duplexes. So currently, we have about 85% of the single-family houses and duplexes being sprinkled. So that leaves about 15% that fall through the cracks and don't get this benefit. The technology and the installation of these systems has increased dramatically over the past 10 to 15 years. And so contractors are getting really efficient about putting these sprinkler systems into houses. And the cost has definitely come down over the last 10 to 15 years. What we're seeing is a sprinkler system called a flow-through system in houses. And so it's part of the building's potable water system. So it's not a separate standalone fire system, which has a lot of expenses and other bells and whistles, literally, that have to go with it. So this would be part of the water system. They typically just branch off of a water pipe and go to a sprinkler head, and then continue on to the next fixture. So what we're seeing is a range of approximately $2 to $3 for per square foot for these flow-through systems. But keep in mind, I'll explain a little bit more what we can do in the future. But for an example, if you take a regularly general sized house, I'll just say 2,000 square feet because easy math for me, at the higher $3 per square foot, you're looking at approximately $6,000 for a system. In a house at 2,000 square foot plus a garage, it's probably going to sell for over $1 million. So if you think about the percentage compared to the sales price of the house, it's less than 1% of that. So we actually think that having this policy in place will actually provide that predictability and certainty to the developers, because many times when the developers design a project and pencil it out and do all their budgeting, they're not always sure or aware if they're going to need a sprinkler or a house. They typically will find out when they come in for a pre-application whether or not they have to do that, and then whether or not there could be redesigning to their project. So having, these houses sprinkled not only provide that predictability, but also it can provide a more flexible design to these plats, these projects that we see. And with the different types of products that we are going to be having with the middle housing, from everything from smaller units to bigger lots and multiple dwellings. With the multiple dwellings, of course, those already get sprinkled. So we're just really talking about the single family, 1 and 2 family houses. We can get creative with the design of those. We as the developers, or we can help the developers get creative with that. If you're asking yourself, wondering whether or not the fire sprinkler cost will negate the costs of the savings from the expedited permit review process, keep in mind that projects that are taking the expedited permit process initiative or incentive are going to be going for a green building. And those typically projects are multifamily, large multifamilies and large commercial buildings that do that. So those buildings already get sprinkled anyway. Again, we're just talking about the 1 and 2 family dwellings. It's probably highly unlikely that they're going to get a green, or somebody requests an expedited permit through a green building incentive for a residential single family dwelling. Fortunately, there are nearby jurisdictions that have implemented the similar policies like this for many years. The previous jurisdiction that I worked in was in City of Kenmore. We adopted this code in 2011, and so they've had it in place for 14 years now. But the good thing is with these nearby jurisdictions, we have people that we can reach out to and talk to about all kinds of things, from the potential costs, the construction costs of them, the opportunities and challenges they have, any kind of safety data that we could have, and bring that back. But similarly, there's a lot of contractors who have been installing a lot of these systems. So we could get pretty clear and relevant data back to you for informational purposes. But if there is an interest from the council on pursuing this, then Jason and I, again, would work towards getting that information from the nearby jurisdictions and also the contractors, and also having a outreach program for the development community. It could be an open house or something to really get some more involvement, and then ideally bring all that information back to you sometime earlier next year, maybe mid next year, before we get into the adoption of the Construction Administrative Code. So, again, there's no action required tonight. It's just really to get a temperature and get your ideas on any of these you'd prefer us to pursue or not to pursue. Again, in our thought processes, these priorities, these ideas really do meet the council's priorities of having the predictability, certainty, and encourage growth. But I guess the question for you guys would be, is there any other areas that you'd like to see highlighted or considered with these? And for that, that's question time.
I get to go first in these, or I can. So yeah, actually that really leads into my first question. Was when I saw we were doing building code updates, I was like, I have questions about things I'm interested in. And I don't know if these fall under this particular part of the code or not, but I have a list. Can I ask you, are these the appropriate things to talk about here?
I think sure. I mean, we want to get a sense of what other priorities to start leaning into before we get into the more formal updates next year. But obviously, the 3 topics we brought up tonight, we'd definitely love to hear feedback on as well. Okay,
perfect. Single stair might be coming next year anyway. Do we have to do anything to adopt that?
So currently, the State Building Code Council has formed a technical advisory committee to look at the single stair aspect that you're referring to. They're not quite done. They're going to report back to the State Building Code Council with their findings and recommendations. I get a expectation that there's going to be a recommendation to move forward with it, but there's going to be a list of trade-offs, and I'm not sure exactly what those trade-offs look like. It could be stronger fire rating, stuff, other things, and pressurization of a stair or shaft or stairway enclosure, stuff of those natures, similar to what Seattle has done. Seattle has implemented this code change many years ago, so they're looking at the Seattle's language. If the state amends the overarching international code, we don't have to do anything. As we adopt the state building code, we adopt all their amendments with it. We do have the possibility to amend the State Building Code Council, their recommended code. That gets a little sticky with this subject. We could talk more about that later.
Okay. When do we expect them to make that recommendation?
Early summer
of
2026.
Okay. Next question is an international elevator standard and looking at smaller elevators for smaller projects. Is that something that's been on our radar or would be appropriate to talk about in this discussion?
I think that'd be more appropriate to talk with our deputy chief and fire marshal, maybe at a future discussion. I think that there may be less support on that one from the technical advisory committee, but I'm not 100% up to speed on it.
No, and I totally understand that, but is this if we're going to have the discussion, if this is the time to have the discussion, I don't want to have a discussion in a couple of months and be like, oh, well, you should have said it a little while ago.
No, when we do bring back any construction administrative code, we could definitely have the discussion.
Okay.
And I'll work with the city manager and the community development director to find out what that schedule looks like, how many times you get to see it, or how that discussion will work. But there will be future ways for you to weigh in on any particular recommended code changes.
Okay.
We'll make note of the interest and add it to the tracker.
I see why Brian is here now, man. He says the right things, and I see the city manager.
That's right.
I am also interested in having, we're really trying to make sure the infill that we want to see actually happens. And I'm interested in, smaller apartment buildings, say up to 10 units, being able to review those under the residential code instead of the commercial code. Is that something that we have the authority to do as a city?
We may. Again, that is another topic that the technical advisory committee is also looking into, and they're going to have the same time period for the recommendation going to the State Building Code Council. I do get the impression that that is going to continue on in some way, shape, or form. If it does, then we would not have to do anything different.
Okay.
When we do, well, we can discuss more about what those challenges would be going forward if we tried to adopt something that was recommended not for approval, but we can have that discussion later.
Okay. I actually had removing sprinkler requirements with a certain fire rating for walls. Because I know that sprinklers can add a significant amount of cost in some of the infill projects that we're looking at. Those are the kind of things that can kind of tip it over the edge of not happening.
So that's one of your recommendations would be to eliminate sprinklers for the fire rated separation between units?
If there's a way to mitigate without the expense of sprinklers, I am very interested in that.
Well, we could take a look at it when we do our analysis, if you could give us that direction to go forward with that analysis and have the what those trade-offs and costs of those trade-offs could be. I'm not sure if it would be cheaper or equal.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Is the alternative going to be cheaper and allow more of the?
You are asking the wrong person. I've never filled out a pro forma or built anything in my life. So, but that's one of the things that, can you undo that? Thank you. It's as I've talked through folks that I know about ways that we can help get this infill that we've made legal actually built. That's something that was suggested to me as a way that we can make it more feasible. Last two are just facade modulation and upper level setbacks, and I think those are things we can discuss in the downtown sub-area plan.
We definitely can, and there was some legislation passed this past year that does direct us to start adjusting our code when it comes to upper floor modulation to building facades. So we're going to have to make those amendments anyway, for sure.
All of these bills that you're referencing were done by our own first legislative district rep, Davina Dewar. So it's fun to see that work she's doing come back here. I had one question. You mentioned like predictability. So like, does that mean that right now in our code, a developer doesn't know if they're going to be required to put in a sprinkler or not until they come in and have a pre-application meeting?
Typically.
So who makes that decision? Is that something that's just like we look at it and go yes or no, depending on factors?
That's going to be the Deputy Chief Fire Marshal.
Okay. I do like predictability. Big picture, and then I will cede my time. I don't know how much time this is going to take, and I have lots of things that I'd like to do. Like, big picture, I think I'd rather spend our energy on figuring out how to make multifamily housing more feasible, like, than worry about sprinklers in single-family homes. Like, we've made it legal, but like everything that you guys do comes with a time cost, and like I would rather spend that time on figuring out how to get the code in line with our zoning so that people can come in and get stuff built.
Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it. I wanted to ask, I have a couple of questions written down. I think the first item, the flexible time limitations, I think that makes total sense. I would want details on specifically the criteria that allows that for a project, which I'm sure would come back when we have a proposal. So for the green building incentives program, how would expediting the permits affect other projects and other permits? Like, is there a trade-off there? What's like, let's say I have a project that's not a green building incentive. Is my project going to take longer to review because we're expediting other permits, or?
Not necessarily. What we'll do is take a look at the overall, process for it. I think that currently, now at least, we have the capacity to be able to expedite something and keep the other projects on track. It really just depends on the application, amount of applications and projects that we get in the pipeline. And if we do have, are aware of that it might slow it down, we do have the possibility of sending it out to a third party to review, either, the non-green building incentive program or the other project. So we really need to be able to manage all the applications as they come in.
And I'll just add, typically we'll have a sense from the time of a project being submitted whether they're going to seek an incentive, so we could almost have an ambassador at the staff level from day one that knows how to steward something through our process more efficiently when they know that this is an incentive that someone would want to avail themselves to, and know from day one how to anticipate that streamlining process.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And then just confirming, it would be removing the rebate, removing the parking reductions because they're moot, keeping the PUD clustering, reduced minimum lot sizes, potentially adding the expediting, but then also keeping those other two methods that we didn't talk about?
That's correct.
Okay. For the fire sprinklers, I'm in new single-family duplexes. I'm hesitant about the cost, but I'm willing to talk about it. Like, I'd be happy to learn more. I would want details on when that requirement would be triggered if someone is redeveloping or renovating, so that it's again predictable for people who are renovating a house they already own, or if they are. When I was on the Planning Commission, we talked about middle housing. We talked about potentially taking a large house and turning it into a multiplex. So when would that be triggered as well? So just understanding, how we can, when that is triggered. And then also, I think just some grounding in how common that requirement is around us. And if I realize that like COVID has made building just a sort of a crazy thing to predict, but like, is there any data on how that requirement would affect housing production? Would be really helpful. Since we added a few more things by the mayor going first, I do want to say I don't think that I could support removing the sprinkler requirement. I think that fire separation keeps the fire from moving between units, but if you have one unit that's devastated and the rest aren't, that can create quite a situation in a community. Having lived in a condo where there were fires in units, like, it still does a lot there. I don't like removing the sprinkler requirement. I think that's not, to me, the way to make it more affordable, but I do like the other items that the mayor listed and would love to learn more about them. So thank you.
I'm going to just jump in briefly. I like the idea of not just with green permitting, but anytime that staff, the city can afford to swap expediting as an incentive instead of getting a rebate or a reduction in their permit, opening that option up to other projects that might qualify for a rebate or a reduction, giving them the option for expediting it, I think is a great idea. So whoever came up with that, props. I think that's a great idea. And I have mixed feelings about, and we're not going to solve it tonight, but mixed feelings about adding to building costs. But I am concerned about, and it's not in my wheelhouse, but I am concerned about fires that are related to lithium battery recharging. And so people, sure, there's fewer smokers, no 4th of July fireworks, but we do have another fire hazard that people are bringing into their homes, and that's recharging their batteries. And so from what I understand, water will not put out a lithium fire, but it would keep it from spreading, correct? So, and we've eliminated requiring garages, which is a great place to recharge batteries if you have a firewall. So if people are doing more recharging of their e-bikes or big battery things within where they're living, I love giving them a fighting chance if a fire starts, an unanticipated fire starts with a lithium, because lithium batteries aren't going to go away in the near future. Giving families a fighting chance for managing something that's really no fault of their own, and they need to get out of a dangerous situation. So more conversation, but I do think that there is merit of looking for context to put sprinklers in.
Thank you for being here and for delaying your presentation and rescheduling it for tonight. I do believe I support replacing the rebate with the expedited permitting, especially given in the packet it was since the program was adopted there hasn't been anybody seeking those rebates, and so replacing that incentive with this incentive that the audience that we're trying to incentivize actually wants. And I'm hoping that there's been has there been feedback of requests for that kind of incentive, or discussing with developers what kinds of incentive they'd be looking for?
Are you talking specifically to the incentive of expediting permits?
Mm-hmm.
That's always the first thing that the builders and developers ask for.
Yep.
And
is there any way we could get this done,
exactly,
approved faster?
And now we can say, yes, you make a green building, you can get it faster.
Yep. Yeah. When I was on the Planning Commission, we were talking about the variety of options for green building. And so it's really great to see this coming back. I do support, tailoring an incentive to meet the needs of the audience or the group that you're trying to serve. So I think that's a good one. When it comes to the sprinklers, I'm wondering if the legislature has taken this one up at all, if it has been considered, or if you know that it's on the docket to be considered.
What the state did back in the 2003 era was take it out of the code. And so what they did was they put it in the appendix so that local jurisdictions could adopt appendix to require that. And the reason they did that primarily was because this was a statewide code, and there's a lot of jurisdictions out there that really don't have adequate resources, water, whatever it may be, and there was no way that they could have really been able to do it. Fortunately, here in Bothell, the projects with the low resources, they need to get the sprinklers. You know what I mean? So those are the ones that are triggering the sprinklers if they have a low water demand or low water capacity. So we do, and then the ones, of course, that have the better water capacity are the ones that are getting by without doing it.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that historical context. It's useful. And kind of to Councilmember Dodd's question around like when we say, you know, requiring fire sprinklers in all new single-family homes and duplexes, what do we mean by the word new?
Okay.
And so, you know, do we mean that because a property owner who's lived there for 40 years tore down and rebuilt, is that new? Or is it that, you know, property recently changed hands and a developer is coming in and they're building, you know, new from a raised lot? Like these are the types of conversations that we've heard from our community before. And those are the questions that trip us up. You know, it's like, how do you interpret the word shall in this situation? Like we're talking about what does new mean? And I think some specifications around that would be useful. And then I appreciate the mayor bringing up some of the other options as well, especially around the single stair. And you know, some of the newer technology for elevators, especially to help with seniors who are trying to age in place. And it's really hard to find ramblers these days, but we do need to be able to help people, you know, live comfortably and safely within, you know, and so I've seen some interesting options when it comes to, you know, putting elevators in places that we haven't traditionally done that, and just making sure that there is a safe way to do that, you know, minimizing injuries. And those are, I guess, are my thoughts on this. Did I miss any of your questions?
No, thanks.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. It's good to have you here. Welcome. In summary, I think that I am a hesitant yes on the flexible time limitations. There are circumstances that I can envision that I want this to happen, and circumstances that I can envision not wanting this to happen. For example, if a stream restoration project comes through, we no longer qualify under state regulations to waive local permit requirements under a special habitat restoration program. However, it's extremely difficult to line up those grants, and so adding additional time that the application is active and doesn't expire could help those sorts of projects go forward when they're limited by other external factors. There's a lot of those things in slide 4 that you mentioned that I can also see being really helpful. One thing that I am cautious and nightmare scenario would be if an administration were to attempt permitting a structure in our jurisdiction that we don't necessarily want here, like a detention facility or something that they could say would be a publicly benefiting or institutional facility. That would be something concerning, and that I would want normal permitting timelines to apply to that sort of project. And so that's like really hypothetical and hand wavy, but it's happened to us before in Sound Transit looking to permit something in Canyon Park, and we were trying to justify how are we going to balance our activity units and maintain our designation in Canyon Park, and ultimately Sound Transit was able to work with us to like rebalance that, and we got to a great end product, but those sorts of like publicly benefiting projects needs to have a really solid definition. So I'm hesitant, but I'm a yes. The second one, I support closing the loophole on the incentive program for green buildings. The third, for sprinklers, I support sprinklering in multifamily and even in sort of like middle housing, because those are often operated by an association, or the buck stops with somebody to maintain those sprinkler systems. And when we're dispersing firefighting to single one-plexes across the city, that's just, to my mind, I don't have enough information about like the resiliency of these systems to know that we're causing issues when they're not maintained. Later on down the road, they become flood hazards, or they start causing more issues later on. So I am really hesitant to start requiring that for new one-plexes and duplexes, but I'm curious to learn more. So it's not a hard no, but I'm a little incredulous about that. And the items that other council members spoke to about defining new, I also have those questions. I would support the mayor's other interests, specifically single stair, and looking at residential building code for middle housing as well. So that's what I have.
Can I clarify and elaborate on one of your comments? When you're talking about the stream restoration project, keep in mind, a lot of those are land use applications, so it might be critical area restorations or other kind of subdivisions or whatever. So maybe right now for this particular permitting and application extension, it's really just pertains to a building or construction permit. So I didn't want to give you any false hope that this would, and maybe that's something we can revisit going forward with the other land use aspects.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I think that the legislature has a mandate from the governor to look into extending the habitat restoration permitting program in the future, and so that will be an evolving situation. But I'm also thinking about stormwater and utility kind of things as well. So, yeah, let's look into it and be really critical on our definitions there.
I like it. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks.
As far as the flexible timing, this was mentioned in the packet and I think in the presentation for the use case was specifically, or that was mentioned was affordable, like arch type programs that require grants and all that, those things. Was this an example, or does it apply to other types of organizations or publicly benefiting things?
So when we get into drafting the actual policy for this, we're going to have a lot of discussions on what this looks like for affordable housing, but it's probably going to be more in alignment with arch projects, you know, ones that do have arch overarching guidance.
Arch overarching.
Yeah, a lot of arches.
Another thing I know, you know, there was a nonprofit that I'm associated with that also had struggled. Now they have to reapply for permits, and all the COVID came and messed up all their plans. Now everything got more expensive, so things are taking longer to raise the funds, but they also now have to reapply for the permits and go through the process again. So I think maybe expanding the scope slightly. We can have discussions around that as well on what type of, there's affordable housing, which is very important, but there's also, that requires outside funding and unpredictable, you know, no out of their control type funding, but there's also other types of organizations that might require, or that might need similar, you know, looking into.
We could look into that, have those further discussions.
Yeah, cool, thank you. As far as expedited permit and the sprinkler systems, the only thing I wanted to add is more of a question. I know in the packet it was mentioned that we do have the quarterly meetings with the builder communities, and I was wondering what that feedback was when those things were presented to them, if they were presented at all, because I know there's, we say you want expedited permits to save on the interest you pay for the, for the loan, but then does make green certification offset that, and then it means, like, they're not gonna make it green, and they'll just might as well wait 6 months instead of 3 months, you know, type thing.
Yeah, we figured that we would bring this to your attention and for your discussions before we reached out to the development community.
Yeah.
But now going forward with your direction, we will start to have those discussions, and it'll be part of this information that we bring back to you for your consideration.
Yeah, it would be very good information because there's multiple stakeholders involved, and it'd be good to have that information from those stakeholders. That's as far as those 3 topics you suggested today, and then obviously the other things that my colleagues had mentioned. The other thing, the fourth thing that I wanted, the fifth thing, I guess, because I'm. Is we heard public comment earlier about, and I don't know if this is conversation for this particular session or another session, about a small project that needs to happen, but it reached a threshold that requires redoing the public infrastructure, so.
Yeah, that will be a
Separate
future conversation,
Okay.
and I do know that our deputy director was out meeting with the individual too, just to get some more information. So we'll, I think it's a known issue, but I think we'll be able to put some more context
Okay,
around
cool.
it.
I wasn't sure if this is a conversation for this session or a future one. Future is fine.
Yeah, I think it'll be coming back.
All right, thank you. It's good, thank you.
Thank you. I think that's everybody. I think we have the information that we need to go forward. So thank you and good evening.
I have one quick question. I don't think I'm changing the numbers on the things I didn't address earlier, but like, I love the idea of expediting permit times, especially because that's what the people that are building housing are asking for. I would love all of our permitting times to be expedited. Is that a staffing problem, or are there other factors?
I feel like
involved
that's
in
a
that?
riddle.
Yeah, I'm not that
if
clever.
everything's expedited,
Like, yeah.
then nothing's expedited.
Well, yeah, but whatever the standard for expedited is, like, you know, I don't know what that looks like, if it takes it from X timeline to like a quarter of X timeline, like, is it just a matter of resources to have everything go on a faster path?
Well, I mean, I think the place that we would want to start with that conversation is to review what we could provide you some more information about what our permitting timelines are and what we're looking for. I think what I hear consistently across the board is predictability of when we say something's going to take X number of time that we hit it. That's what is the premium. And so I think starting with that baseline and then maybe having the conversation of what would be a level of service above that, if that's something that would be attainable, what would it take to do it, could be a budget conversation.
That's basically the question I have. Like, is it just a budget resource conversation, or are there other factors I don't know about?
I think there's a combination of things. There's a certain level of where you can't go faster.
Yeah.
And we do have certain requirements for reporting now under Senate Bill 5290 on certain permit types, but we are tracking lots of others as well. Cool. And as you recall, last month, we did come to you with a development report. When we come back, probably this, I don't know, maybe in the spring or in the early winter, we can include that data because now we have a baseline to compare things to using 5290. So we'll come back with that.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, you guys can spin around in your chair.
It is.
Yeah.
It is definitely community development night. So
Next up is a Middle Housing Code Update and Inclusionary Zoning Code Amendments. It's Agenda Bill 25170.
excellent. Yeah. So this is our second of 3 community development specific presentations tonight. And again, no action needed. You've heard earlier in the year about this, and so staff will bring you back up to speed of some of the conversations that took place earlier, and certainly some of you will probably remind me that it's been a discussion for a while. So we are coming back with some additional information about Middle Housing Code implementation. With that, the presentation is going to be led by Ray Sosa, our Senior Long Range Planner, and he's joined at the table tonight by Christian Getz, our Deputy Community Development Director. But you knew that. Ray, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kyle. Yes, good evening, Council. Tonight I'm here to talk about 2 topics on the Middle Housing Code Update and our inclusionary zoning amendments. Tonight I'm continuing the conversation that you heard plenty of times before. No action is required tonight. The study session is intended to provide City Council with an update on the draft Middle Housing Code amendments and to seek input and feedback on potential zoning code amendments to expand the inclusionary zoning standards to additional areas of the city. As I go through these slides tonight, please keep these questions in mind and any other questions that may arise as well. So starting with our middle housing code middle housing topic for tonight. First topic for tonight is our middle housing code update. So on the chart, on the images here, to the left, we have the first image, which is our new code that we brought in 2024, which brought our middle housing code up to 4 in the areas that you see highlighted in yellow. And the second image in the middle image is shows where we brought up to 6 and highlighted in orange thanks to the comp plan zoning, to the upzonings. And then to the right is our proposed code amendments, which will bring close the gaps of bringing it up to 6, to 6 nearly citywide with an affordability requirement as well. And so shown here is the draft code in comparison to our current code. This code brings Bothell to a Tier 1 equivalent city, which allows up to 6 units, with 2 set aside as affordable for households earning up to 80% of the AMI for the east side. And so our second topic for tonight is our inclusionary zoning. You may also know this as our mandatory or voluntary affordable housing code. Shown here is our current inclusionary zoning requirements as it exists. Highlighted in purple. Only 4% of Bothell's residential areas have zoning standards that require the inclusion of affordable housing as of now. And staff recommends moving our requirement away from overlays into existing zoning categories highlighted in purple, which will be those categories as from RM2 and above, including downtown and Canyon Park, 2 of our most dense neighborhoods with ample potential for housing next to high-capacity transit. This would bring an increase from 4% of our current areas to 47% of all of our residentially zoned areas. And so these incentives highlighted here are the incentives that staff are studying. These incentives are a mutual benefit for everyone involved. The city and the community get affordable units, and the developer receives an incentive for building them. As I mentioned, these incentives we're currently considering, but we're also open to consider incentives not listed here. And so, as I mentioned, no action is required tonight. Tonight, we're just here to provide City Council with an update on our draft middle housing code amendments and to seek input and feedback on our potential zoning code amendments to expand our inclusionary zoning standards. As I mentioned, the questions: what additional areas or zones should be considered expansion of the mandatory inclusionary housing requirements, and what are the incentives could staff consider that may assist in production of affordable housing?
I feel like this is a drive-through study session.
Yeah, and we're trying to make sure that we're focusing on these two topics within the broader umbrella of the Housing Action Plan, housing affordability, creating that variety, really focusing in on House Bill 1220 as well as the cost-burdened households that we were seeing within the comp plan work, where I think we were just under 30% of households were cost-burdened. And of those 5,000 or so, 2,000 were severely cost burdened. So taking these steps will inch us further into compliance with 1220 and really set us up to be able to create those opportunities for not only the current residents, but those residents that we want to bring in to the community. So
I have a question. We're looking at incentives, but we're also talking mandatory. So I guess what is it? Like, are we saying you can have these things if you build affordable housing, or you have to build affordable housing?
Yeah, state law. Well, so if we establish requirement for mandatory affordable housing, state law requires that we establish incentives essentially that provide that the project with the affordable units, the required affordable units, is equal to or more feasible than what the current market rate could produce.
Okay.
We're working with the consultant right now to establish the numbers. The numbers aren't good for a market rate project right now. Those are all coming back as infeasible, which is why developing anywhere is really, really tricky. What we're seeing built out is what's financed under previous times. So these incentives, this grouping here is the initial, concept of, what do you think about height increases? What do you think about, density flexibilities that would then make it pencil so that it is a defensible, mandatory requirement if we create the voluntary approach, it's similar to what we've already done, where we've created a lot of density around the city, but then we just have to hope that we'll get those affordability bands, the 80% and lower. Really, that's the tricky piece, the 30 to 80%, where we're really wanting to focus these on making sure that we're set up to align with that mandate. Not only out of the 1220, but the Housing Accountability Act that passed last year.
Okay. That was my only question. I don't need to give all of my opinions at first again, but I have them. You want me to? All right. I am really uncomfortable with doing it in the residential medium areas, downtown in Canyon Park, like in areas where we see larger, bigger projects, like I'm more comfortable with it. But the residential medium is something that we've really recently done, and that's something that we haven't seen other communities do. And our pre-application numbers are really encouraging, but we haven't gotten permits and we haven't started to see projects built in that yet. And I don't want to do something that could disincentivize that. And because yes, like mandatory affordability it's good to have those like deed restricted affordable units, but it's also good to just have more units, and that helps affordability in a bigger sense that is harder to prove. So I'm comfortable having it be within zones. That makes all the sense to me in the world. Not having an overlay, because what we've done with our residential medium is so novel and different and new, I want to see what it can do before I start adding requirements on it.
I got you. Thank you for bringing this forward to us. And I think to add to what the mayor was saying is that I'd like for you to come back with information around, like, if we were to just make the requirements for inclusionary zoning in Canyon Park and downtown, what percentage of residentially zoned areas would that be? Because that's taking RM2 and above out, and it would be focusing in those two areas.
Can I ask a question on that? Would it be just Canyon Park and downtown, or should we consider North Creek as well?
Yeah, so like RM2 and above is it sounded like the mayor was saying take out our RM2, but there are sections of the city that are above. Like specifically, I would, before asking about North Creek, I would ask about Midtown, our new Midtown. I still think it's Lake Pleasant, but through there and like in looking at North Creek up there. Oh, I can't read it. The blue. You're talking about the blue area, right?
The magenta just north, just east of
405
campus. Yeah.
That North Creek. Got it. Because that's not RM2. So yeah, I think that they're like the purpley magenta areas do make sense, but we would be then removing RM2 out of that. And I also want to understand a little bit more about so I appreciate the answer about if affordability is required, then incentives need to be offered. Are we required by Commerce or the state to require affordability? Like, is that part of recent legislation?
We're required to plan under 1220 and the Housing Accountability Act to show that we have created the capacity for those AMI bands, and we've created the standards. We're going off of guidance. We're looking at current cases that are out there impacting other cities, and we're learning as we go. And the city attorney's probably staring at me right now. But jurisdictions are all trying to understand what the Commerce guidance is intended to have us do, and we're trying to make our best effort to make sure that we're planning forward.
Yeah, and that's partly what I'm trying to understand is like, this is, so adopting inclusionary zoning requirements is a tool that is available to us. I'm trying to understand, is it current, like, are we required to adopt it at this point? Or is it just a tool that we could choose to adopt? And I'm sorry if that's semantics.
It seems as though it's the intent behind the state law is that it's a requirement to show that we will create these units without any other tools, without any funding resources that we could throw at projects. And, you know, yeah.
Okay, I think I may be getting a sense of what you're saying. My concern, and I think the mayor also addressed this, was we've seen that if the housing market, like if the building market isn't hot enough in an area, by adding requirements, we then lose developers who are willing to come in. And so I don't want to implement a requirement that then means we're missing out on housing. And it's just trying to find that balance. And so I'm trying to get a better sense of what we have to do and what our options are, and just to be really clear on that.
Sure.
And when it comes to I realize we jumped into talking about middle housing, about inclusionary zoning, and the middle housing code is recommending requiring 2 affordable units. So in a way, that's also inclusionary zoning. And I would then ask, does that still apply to the areas and the zones that we're talking about, or would that be citywide?
The draft proposes developments of greater than 10 units for the mandatory affordable housing. So if we kept it as we drew the magenta purple map up there, those RM zones aren't likely to have projects of more than 10 units. So this chart for middle housing would cover those smaller scaled, 4 to 6, if they're doing 6 units on a single lot under the middle housing code, that's how we would achieve those 2 affordable deed restricted units.
And those could be in zones not included in the inclusionary zoning areas.
They could, yes, they could be. Yeah.
Because it could be any lot in the city that you put 6 on would have a requirement of 2.
Yes, any lot that allows for residential, yes.
Okay. I think if we do that, we're gonna not see it happen. Like my understanding is, if faced with that reality, we just don't see that type of middle housing developing. And so I'm willing to be convinced by data that like there is a demand for 6 units, a demand to build 6 units with 2 affordable units, and that we see that being a successful proposal. But without that information, I'm hesitant.
I feel like hesitant is also the word that is where I'm at with this. I really appreciate the work goes into it, and I just want to acknowledge that like the guidance is confusing and new and changing, and we look to you for answers, and I feel like that's a lot of pressure. So thank you for talking about it when it's like all, I think, pretty confusing. Or maybe it's just me because I don't do this for a living. Who knows? I am really hesitant about required affordability just killing projects. I think I also want us to meet all of the things we have to do under state law. And if it comes to we have to use these tools even though we're worried that in our context they won't work, then tell us that and we can go back to our representatives and try to refine state law. That sounds so easy when I say it like that, but we haven't seen projects from what has already been done. And I do want to just clarify, I think I'm also on the team of if we need to deploy IZ to meet our obligations or we think it will, in fact, result in more units, I would say yes to Canyon Park downtown and North Creek, but I'm also hesitant about RM2. I think what I also want to avoid is we had, what sticks with me about the comp plan is the people who said there's going to be a 5-story apartment building next to your single family home and it's terrifying, and let's not have that be the way that our comp plan starts to take shape. So I look forward to more on this, and I think I just need more on it. I'm not really landing anywhere yet, but thanks for bringing back more information in the future, because it's just very hard to get a grasp on it, like what's required versus what we think will work versus what maybe has worked in other cities. And I've been talking to neighbors and friends and people in Bothell, and I think there's this idea that we can just do what another city has done, but we don't have the same development environment as even Kenmore or Redmond, or the cities around us have very different contexts. And so I'm just worried how we strike the right balance for Bothell. So those are my comments. I'm not sure they're useful, but thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to point out, we have met with the development community, 3 separate meetings to talk through these incentives, brainstorming, asking them what they think when it comes to including affordable housing. All preliminary conversations, but we have heard back from developers that are moving forward with projects that would like to avail themselves to something along these lines, whether it is additional height to make it work out for them. So we're encouraged with what we're hearing. I don't want to say what we're seeing, because we haven't seen the actual permit come in, but the conceptual ideas that we're talking through with them and being open to that communication. They've really appreciated it. We really appreciated the conversation and the time that they took to do that with us. And we're really hopeful of what we're going to start to see with the zoning that we created, and these potential opportunities with this type of a change.
I really appreciate that. I think it's hard for a lot of us in our own personal lines of work to know that, and so that does help, because it feels like a big unknown. So that helps. Thank you.
I think that based on what I've been hearing, that the current development environment doesn't even really allow sixplexes to pencil, and so mandating inclusionary zoning is also a kind of a red flag for me, because I don't know if these incentives are sweet enough to get at the affordability, and it might end up just being a moratorium on all development, which is not ideal. So yeah, I share the same concerns about the inclusionary zoning. I think that the potential incentives that you've offered are the whole book. I can't really even think of any other than pre-approved plans, but that doesn't even really get at we're not gonna have a stamped sixplex that the Bothell walk up or whatever. We can dream, but that's not what is a good use of our time. I think if we do inclusionary zoning, mandatory inclusionary zoning, I am extremely hesitant on RM2. I like the idea of expanding it incrementally beyond the 4% in downtown. Sure, let's do it in the areas that we know that there's development appetite. But maybe we could also pilot it for a limited time and see, if by the end of a 3-year cycle, we're not seeing any affordable housing being produced by a temporary pilot inclusionary zoning mandate, then it would dissolve back into its original kind of affordability incentives, rather than kind of the layered approach which we've taken before, and that Planning Commission has repeatedly led us towards. So that's just an idea, because I'm just worried. I don't want to enshrine the city in amber. That's not the point of any of us being up here. And mandating it in Queensboro, that on the map it just sticks out, that's not going to produce sixplexes. there's just not enough development appetite there. And so I don't know, I don't see the purpose of hampering any and all development there when we still could potentially, we could get more units rather than holding off all development changes for the mandatory inclusionary zoning. So I'm really hesitant. Are there ways to scale it? Are there ways to like make it temporary and just kind of dip our toe in the water before jumping all the way in? And I realize that anything that we do can be undone. So maybe it's not all that bad to try it out, and then we can always revisit it later. But it's a tough pill to swallow right now. So leave it at that.
Question for you. I love the incentives. I love the list that you guys brought up. And if these are kind of like we're trying to do, which provides the same or greater economic benefit for the builder, it seems to me that if we did that right and we made it optional, that people would use it. So I have no beef with the incentives in exchange for affordable housing if somebody wants to do it. So somebody, hey, give me an extra floor, like give me this density level, something like that. And like, yeah, in exchange for a certain amount of affordable units, like we'll do that. Like, I'm fine with that. It's just the housing that that it prevented that we didn't know about that terrifies me. Especially because we've just done something really new, and I really just want to see how it works, and like rather than add more costs on it. The other thing that, like I heard you with the 10-unit threshold. What I worry about with a 10-unit threshold is a project that could have been 15 units is only 10. Like, and I'm worried that we'll start to see a lot of like 10-unit buildings happening that could have been more, but they're trying to avoid that. So I love the incentives and the work you've done, and I would love them to be incentives. And if we did it right, we should see some of that housing get built.
I'm wondering if some of the reason why inclusionary zoning might be necessary is because we don't have a development climate or a group of, like, the local developers aren't well versed in middle housing, right? It's a new concept for a lot of the cookie cutter kind of like stamp out a plat of single family and be done, which is what we're trying to like move them along a little bit with regulation. And so I'm wondering if that was some of the impetus behind the mandated inclusionary zoning. It's not to, it's like, will the sweetened deals of those affordability incentives kind of outweigh the cost of requiring them to do those units kind of subsidized by the rest of the project? So I'm not sure like why did we come up with mandatory inclusionary zoning to begin with in the 4%? What were some of the decision making around that? And if we haven't seen any changes, what's the point of extending the program?
Yeah, and I think it's the law not just encouraging us to do it, but to plan and accommodate for the AMI bans. So.
It was my impression that in our comp plan, we were given housing unit, like these units go for this band and like things like that, and that was a comp plan discussion. I did not realize that there would be a required inclusionary portion after that. Is that something that we're like learning more as time goes on? Like, and is there something more we could do in zoning to meet those AMI bans?
Okay, I think that's a two-part question. I'm going to answer the first part, and Christian, I'm going to hand it over to you for the second part. GMA requires the cities to like Christian said, plan for and accommodate means both your comp plan and your implementing development regulations. So we kind of took a two-step approach here in Bothell. We did comp plan, set the stage last year for the work that you guys are doing right now.
Is there any way to accomplish in zoning change instead of inclusionary requirements, what we're trying to do here?
One thing I want to add is that when we looked at that chart earlier, the pie chart, it was not on this presentation, but we looked at that pie chart showing the 75% of our housing goals have to be for the 80% AMI and below. We know that the market's not going to be able to deliver housing for the AMIs that are 50% and below, just because the cost of land in this region is way too high and the cost of labor as well is way too high. And so inclusionary zoning is a tool to help us bring the housing to those AMI populations that even with subsidies and financial incentives, the market will just not be able to deliver. And so we're hoping that through these incentives and through these benefits, that we can subsidize those housing units for those populations for those AMIs that will never be served by the markets.
What AMI, so there are projects now for 80% AMI?
Not at the moment, no.
So those incentives will build more 80% AMI. Nobody will build 50% AMI unless you do more incentives than this.
Exactly. And so that's kind of what we're trying to get, is that these incentives are not just for the 80%, but really for the 50% and below AMI, especially the 50 to 30% range, which we know that even with regular incentives might not be enough. And so we were hoping that this incentive will bring forward more of those units that we have to plan as part of our housing growth targets.
Are there pro formas that show like that these incentives will actually work? Because I don't know if they haven't worked in the past. To Councilmember Kurt's question, why would they work in the future?
We can bring them with our consultant that we're working with to look at that as well.
I don't have a lot to add. I, went through the material and I appreciate getting it. And I'm sorry if I'm going to be a Debbie Downer here. I appreciate the efforts here. But you just brought up, it's a complicated world that we live in, and costs of everything is huge. And how we can offset as a city to make things affordable is a really big, huge lift for us to bear on ourselves. And so I guess what I would ask council in future, when we talk about legislative goals, both on a state and federal level, is to have a really scrutinizing eye of decisions that are being made that are inflating the cost of doing business, of living as a city, and supporting those things that are going to bring and rein in, I'm not talking about going socialist or, I'm not talking about that. But what have we imposed on ourselves on a state and federal level that have fed into this problem of just building new construction and improving an area, making it impossible for us to do that? So great that you're doing this, but it is a huge lift, and it's gone from a very expensive proposition to almost an unattainable proposition to build in and revitalize communities. So it's your day job, not mine, but I appreciate what you're doing, but what you do is just one small piece of a very, very big problem.
A follow-up question to what the mayor was asking for. Are we required to show something right now? Does it have to be codified right now, or can it wait until we see some results from what we did last year?
We'll be tracking. So we're going to take that table from the comp plan. Those are our targets, the various AMI bands, and every year we'll be showing, okay, here's how many market rate units we've created, and here's how many may fall in the 100 to 120. Without any deed restrictions, we don't anticipate seeing any. Tick off those numbers on the lower bands. But through that reporting, we would be able to show, well, we're not dropping down the number for our target, our countywide.
Yeah, because it was 75%, right?
Right.
The number.
Right. So that's how we're interpreting, we need to do something, and this is our, initial attempt at, okay,
What's the deadline to show some progress? Is it the 5 years, or is it just reporting this is in 5 years?
It's showing that we can actually plan and accommodate for. So, if we didn't do anything, then I don't know what may happen. We want to put our best foot forward with something, whether it's mandatory, voluntary, doing these steps with middle housing, and like I said, various strategies, which we'll get into more and more. Ray will get into more and more with the housing action plan work that's going to run through next year. So there's no time frame listed, but all we have to go by is plan for and accommodate.
So there's that stakeholder, the state, but then we have people who want to move here who can't afford, but then you have the builders so there you have multiple stakeholders being affected by this. And some people want to minimize the money they put out of their pocket, that is the renters or buyers, and then you have people who want to maximize money in their pocket, that is the developers, which is fine because we live that's our capitalist system, we have to accommodate. So that's why my question about pro formas is, would those incentives actually help? Because I don't know, it hasn't been proven to Councilmember Kurd's question, underlying meta question is we've had it before. It hasn't worked. Why do we think it's going to work right now?
And we're working through those pro formas right now with our consultant, and so we hope to bring those back to show the math, to show the receipts of what they're seeing, how they're working on that, and how they brought in the development community input based on rate of return, cost for construction, making sure that those numbers lined up, and so we can bring that back with our next conversation around this to give it a little bit more foundation.
And I'll add that in Washington State, we are required to show that any inclusionary zoning has to be at least financially beneficial for a developer, or otherwise we can get challenged. And so it was in our best interest to bring something forward that we feel that is financially feasible for the majority of developers. And we know that some developers have their own special requirements, but generally speaking, should be financially feasible. And so we won't feel comfortable moving forward with any recommendations until we have the performance that show that it is financially feasible.
And there's also a difference between a smaller developer versus a larger one, right? Because somebody can bear the burden, others might not be able to, right? So, thank you.
Thank you for making that distinction, that it has to be financially of a benefit. I think that is helpful. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to make sure I got a couple thoughts out. One is that, like we've heard from the mayor and others, that providing those incentives, I think, is really what I've heard an appetite for. Well, we already know that people are planning on building affordable units, and they want additional incentives. And so I support the incentives without requiring inclusionary zoning. So I think that we could see, I'd be comfortable with moving that forward. But when it comes to inclusionary zoning, like I said, I wanted to see data. I guess I'm going to be more specific about what kind of data I want to see, case studies specifically. And if it's something that we don't find examples in the U.S., I'd love to see, how does Finland do it? How does Germany do it? Right? And I think the answer is social housing. But I'd like to have a better idea of, in the places where functional zero has been able to be achieved, what are some of the tools they're using for building housing? And usually those are places where there isn't a housing shortage. But are there places where there's a housing shortage and people have achieved functional zero to homelessness? I'd like to know what that data is. I'd like to have some actual case studies that could guide our work. Thank you.
Another thing I mentioned resident stakeholders. I had a comment that I sent before. It's the definition of affordable housing. I know we talk about AMI, like we can use those terms here, but I don't know if a lot of people know what 20% AMI, 30% AMI, and what is AMI anyway, you know, and how is that set so that we can be more specific on, and people watching or reading later would understand exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we can include that information, you know, what those equate to in the King County average median income. So,
yeah. I think so. I don't think I have anything left to say that wouldn't be just me repeating myself, and we already hear that too much. I think we're good. Do you guys have what you need? Cool. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your work.
You have plenty of work ahead of you. Thank you for being willing to do it.
All right, it is 8:39. We are going to break until 8:55. That's 16 minutes. It's a round number. All right, welcome back. Next up is Agenda Bill 25171, the Critical Areas Ordinance. City Manager.
Stealing microphones, making this happen. Thank you, Mayor. Just really briefly, Council has recently heard an update from staff on this work, and they've gone back and done some additional work. We've gotten some comments and feedback, including from the Planning Commission. So that's what you're here about tonight. Just one note that I want to make that was in the agenda bill as well is that just in the interest of there's been a lot of legal review of different things going on in our lives right now. Oftentimes when you see draft code, it's substantially reviewed already, and of course, if there's changes, like we re-review. But in this case, there will be a full legal review before anything would come back to you for adoption. But just as a caveat, there may be some there may be additional changes that need to be made through that review. We will flag that before anything that would be called out for adoption. But yeah, this one just hasn't gotten the full review yet. So just be aware of that, be mindful, but otherwise everything about you're going to hear, we don't have anything intentionally that would be problematic, but we just want to make sure. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to staff to walk you through what we've heard since the last time we were here.
Hi, everyone. Good to be back. Today we'll be talking about the Critical Areas Ordinance and the SEPA update. Like the city manager said, we'll just be going over the comments that we received during Planning Commission and different updates from them. So for City Council action today, there's no action required. The purpose of this meeting, like I said, is just to provide updated information on the mandatory update of the Critical Areas Ordinance, along with updates to the locally established SEPA threshold exemption levels, and to receive feedback from y'all today. Okay, so these are discussion questions that we have for today, and this slide is also going to be at the end of the presentation as well. All right, so Planning Commission feedback. We held a study session with Planning Commission on September 17th to let them know about the updates from the Critical Areas Ordinance from our previous meeting with City Council on September 9th. Planning Commission supported a lot of the feedback that City Council said on that September 9th study session. This includes the SEPA thresholds to the maximum allowed by the state, having a tiered approach to the riparian management zone widths, and adding Snohomish County's noxious weed list to the code. Those changes are reflected in the draft code that you have tonight. Since that meeting, we have received comments from both Washington State Fish and Wildlife as well as the Department of Natural Resources. Staff are currently editing the code after reviewing the feedback and recommendations that we received from these two agencies. I would also like to note that the code that you have tonight doesn't reflect those edits yet. So the ones you'll have next will reflect these comments that we've received from both WDFW and DNR. So with WDFW, a couple of the comments that they gave us is, one, they wanted us to create an adaptive management program. So creating an adaptive management program to help ensure critical area regulations meet the state mandated standards of no net loss of critical area functions and values. So staff are looking to do this. The program will not be codified, but staff are working to create the program itself. We are adding a WDFW definition for riparian management zones in the definition section, as well as including specifications for reporting in the exception for reasonable use section. We are specifying the steps an applicant must take to demonstrate compliance with avoidance of impacts within the critical area report requirements, as well as deleting draft code staff proposed around non-conforming structures that was not supported by BAS, according to WEFW. Other edits that we're making are centered more around grammar or adding small phrases that help align the code to WDFW's vision. So in your packet, we have the WDFW's comments more in depth, so you can review those as well as we will come back with the draft code with these changes at our next meeting. From Department of Natural Resources, again, their comments are also in your packet, but we are going through with all the comments that they gave us and making those edits in our code. That includes making sure that there's consistency of language throughout the document, using the same phrases throughout. There were some that were different than others, but meant the same thing, so making sure we use a singular phrase for that. Adding a reference to the Washington Geologic Information Portal, as well as adding a small table that notes each hazard and the related required reports, analysis, and plans that are required and by whom they must be signed by, if applicable. And that's something we are currently working on too. Some other code updates. We are continuing to evaluate riparian management zone widths. Right now, we are in discussion with other peer communities like Shoreline, Kenmore, Woodinville, Linwood, to name a few, to see what they are doing with the RMZ zone widths as well, and how they're balancing development as well as environmental protection. We also included city council suggestions like I mentioned earlier. This includes having more of a tiered approach to the RMZ widths. So that would be type F would be, or other salmonoid bearing streams are at 120 feet now. And then the type Ns are at 115 feet. And all of these streams have the opportunity to decrease their RMZ widths to 100 feet if the vegetative buffer standards are met. Again, tonight we have no action required. This is just to get some feedback from City Council on the draft code that we have for the critical areas ordinance, as well as the SEPA threshold exemption levels. So next steps. So we have Planning Commission public hearing in the findings, conclusions, recommendations meeting next Wednesday, October 15th. Staff will continue to evaluate comments from agencies, City Council, and Planning Commission, and draft the code accordingly. And it will return on October 21st to City Council for our public hearing. So these are our questions for tonight. Does the draft code for the critical areas ordinance support the city's council's goals and values towards development and environmental protection? And does council have any changes, feedback to the tiered approach to stream buffers or riparian management zones? Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation, and thanks for coming back and showing what you changed based on our feedback and also from Planning Commission to answer the questions. Yes, I think that the draft code supports our city council's goals and values towards development and environmental protection. And I don't have substantial changes or feedback on the tiered approach. I think that it's the right mechanism, and I think it's consistent with what we talked about before. I do want to talk briefly about the change. Thank you for making the change to noxious weed list. I liked seeing that in there, but now it's inconsistent. Previously, so there's a recommendation in the Facet report that said that allowed activities in critical areas and their buffers would include removal of invasive and noxious weeds listed in the Washington State noxious weed list, class A, B, and C species. And so it looks like that change was made on page 176 of the packet under 14.04.150. But then later on, we talk about the Snohomish and King County noxious weed lists, which are different than the state list. So it's more specific to talk about Snohomish and King County lists, and I think that that would be important to add in there. And I don't think Facet really thought about the county lists being more specific, but because of our local context, it just makes sense to include that there. So it's really minor, but it matters. I want to be able to remove noxious weeds in areas, and I don't want to be hampered by state code when our local areas should preside. Thank you for all your work.
I don't have anything to add except great idea, and you are not a friend to noxious weeds. I got your back.
Really, thank you for the updates, and I also don't want to be a friend to noxious weeds. So thanks for your attention to that.
Just do what Karsten wants.
I appreciate the work that went into updating this, and it was it working? Okay, good. Okay, I was like, is that a message? And I do appreciate that you included the notes and comments from Fish and Wildlife in here. And if I'm reading that correctly, what I'm seeing is that they're basically just offering language that clarifies what we already had in the code that might be more consistent with state stuff. And so, like, from what I could tell, there's not any like drastic changes or recommendations being made. It was just like, you could say it this way. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. There was one example where it was a defined term within the state code, state laws, and WDFW's materials, but we only use the term once. So usually we wouldn't define a term one time. We would refer to those agencies if there was ever a question about, well, what do we mean by fill in the term here? If we don't have it defined, we'd look to that. We'd look to the dictionary if we had to.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you for bringing this all together. It sounds like this will be ready for public hearing next week with Planning Commission and then the week after with us. Okay, cool. That sounds like you're on track. And yeah, if anybody makes a, noxious weeds are not my friend kind of t-shirt or hoodie, I'd be there for it. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything to say? About this? You can say whatever you want after we adjourn, and I can decide if I want to stay and listen or not. All right, we're adjourned.